I was just thinking that, so I work out of a co-working space, so this is not my office. But if it were, I have a lot of one-liners that I would now paint on the wall just from this conversation. I feel like a lot of key takeaways, like a seat at the table, focus on the single story, scaling authentic interactions. It's really helpful to focus in on the purpose behind what we're trying to do. So I appreciate that, and that gives me renewed enthusiasm for getting ready to launch this platform.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 46 of Business Therapy, the show where every week Jonathan and I meet live with professionals looking to get mindful advice on their business problems. Today on the show, we have Carly. Hi, Carly.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Why don't we start by you telling us a little bit more about yourself, your business, and then the challenge you wanted to talk about today.
Okay. So hi, I'm Carly Buxton. I'm the founder and CEO of Nessle. Nessle is an online platform that connects new and expectant parents with experts for tailored support on all things pregnancy, postpartum, and parenting. So I started the business in late 2019 just as myself. I'm a postpartum doula and certified lactation counselor, and I was really eager to use digital tools with my clients. And then when the pandemic started and changed everything about perinatal support, I found a space to expand Nessle. And so since 2020, we have grown. We now have 32 experts listed on the website, and I have a CTO and technical co-founder and a team of total 4 people now working on Nessle. And what we are currently facing is that we are launching our platform. So it's been completely concierge, very much behind the scenes MVP until 2 weeks from around today. So mid-September is when we were hoping to open up the platform for transactions and interactions. And we don't have a marketing person on staff. So many of us have marketing, experience here and there, but we were eager to talk with y'all about a marketing plan, like a launch strategy for a two-sided marketplace on a shoestring budget.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, first, let me start by saying congratulations on the business growth. And it sounds like it's a really exciting time for you and the team. And yeah, the great concept, great product. And in terms of the marketing, we'll dive in. But before we do, I'd love to just get a little bit more context about, like you said, we've got a shoestring budget, which we'll just go ahead and say it's like we have to be very mindful about costs, and you've got a two-sided marketplace. So maybe explain to the audience a little bit more when we talk about two-sided marketplace for those who aren't as familiar, what that means in your context and kind of who the parties are and what we're trying to accomplish there.
Okay, so we're a two-sided marketplace because we serve 2 customers, and we are the entity that matches them to one another. So on the one side of our market, we have parents, and these are individuals who either are trying to conceive and thinking about fertility questions, really all the way through pregnancy, birth, early postpartum, and parenting until around a school-aged child. So that's our sweet spot on the customer side for parents. And on the other side are all of the experts who serve them. So these are not medical experts like they're OBGYNs or licensed clinical therapists or those sort of people. It is people who are just one step below that threshold of medically credentialed. These are postpartum doulas, certified lactation counselors, sleep specialists, parenting gurus, pelvic floor therapists, really anyone who has some sort of training and expertise on some subject matter that touches that full life cycle, the full spectrum of parenting challenges. And so we're a two-sided marketplace. I often compare us to, for example, Airbnb or Uber, where, say Uber, for example, say a rider. Imagine that you want a ride to the airport and you had to sort through pages upon pages upon pages of potential drivers. You don't know if they're available right now. You don't know if you prefer good music to good conversation. That's currently what it is like for parents who are looking for support somewhere in their journey of parenting. And so as opposed to a platform like what currently exists, we are like Uber. So you can state your challenge, describe the question that you're having, and it goes to our secure private platform that's seen only by our Nessle approved experts. And they, on their own time and on flexible schedule, grab questions that they feel confident to answer with a one-on-one video conference. So it's kind of like gigifying or Uberizing perinatal support for parents.
Okay, great. And on the services side, that seems pretty intuitive what the parents to be or new parents would get. But just to be really hone in on what the value is for the practitioners, you kind of mentioned virtual, gigifying, flexibility. But could you kind of just articulate that in your own words about what are you selling? What's the benefit of being part of Nessle for those providers in those niche roles?
So the benefit of being part of Nessle for a provider is, number one, flexibility. So burnout is really high in the birth worker field because a lot of our work is in person, and you don't always know when a person's going to go into labor or suddenly need you or suddenly have an acute breastfeeding challenge. And so a lot of people burn out after just a few years and are really looking to continue exercising those skills, but in a way that is more on their own flexible schedule. So that's one really key element of it. And another is that we streamline the entire experience for them. So like I said, I'm a lactation counselor, and without Nessle, it is, a back and forth of email scheduling. The clients have my personal number. They can text me, and sometimes do text me multiple months after I've, last seen them or given them guidance with their child. And so it's really a chance for the experts to distance themselves a little bit from that personal involvement with the business and compartmentalize their work life by using a platform, Nessle.
Got it. Great. That really helps.
Also, one other and very important thing, which became clear to me in the pandemic, is that the beauty of virtual support is that there can be a client who is the perfect fit for an expert, and they're separated by multiple states.
Yeah.
They would never have found each other from Google just because of the way that it's set up. They would never have found each other from referrals and word of mouth. But through Nessle and through our filtering platform, they are able to find one another and connect. So just a few months ago, I connected a mother in Richmond, Virginia, which is where I'm located, to a sleep specialist in Barcelona, Spain. And it's because she offers the exact style of gentle approach that this mother described to me. And so that's a really great example of how experts can go really niche and get specialized in the part of the field that they're most passionate about and still find tons of customers.
How did you attract the 32 experts that you have already? What was your marketing process to get to where you are right now?
So we did a few things. My CTO she built something that would use Yelp's API and go through in key cities that we had targeted as being particularly active in Google searches of keywords that relate to perinatal support. And she used that to find contact information for doulas and other birth workers in those key cities. And we emailed them, and if they were interested, we offered to onboard them. So we have a very important element of joining our company, which is an onboarding training where they can understand the customer, understand the Nessle brand and what's expected of them, and then also get some tips for leading virtual support sessions. And so, I used to work in a role where I saw a lot of email opening statistics. So I know it's often disheartening, but that felt like a lot of work for not a lot of return. Yeah. Really, where we found the best return was people in our own networks. So friends of friends, people who are somehow connected to the Richmond area or Central Virginia or the Mid-Atlantic, or knew someone on our staff. This is really where we've gotten the experts so far.
Okay. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to move on to the customers. So how have you attracted the ones you've had so far? And
we haven't launched yet. So everything that we've done up to date has been the individual experts have used their own clientele. So whatever they've normally done, wherever they've gotten customers in the past. To speak from my own business as a lactation counselor, it has been, I would say, two key ways. The first is from word of mouth, past clients. And then the second is from one Facebook post that continues to exist in this huge mom group where someone highly recommended my services. And a lot of my own personal business comes from people who've read that post, honestly. So that's the key.
You haven't had people come to you as a group, regardless of the technology. You haven't had like people have worked with the specific experts, but not with the company.
That's right. Yes. So we are hoping when we launch to be able to find some way to bring parents to the company, because the experts are ready to go. They want customers. We're less focused on that side right now. We want to bring the customers to the experts.
And that kind of brings us up to the question with a little more context. So the marketing challenges or the marketing concern that you have is really with this launch and making sure when you turn it on, the marketing efforts return to customers is really the outcome. So I guess, and before we start talking about it more of our perspective, the tension that you're feeling more personally around this topic, like you said, you mentioned budget constraints, which is just a physical issue. But I guess maybe talk to us a little bit more how you're feeling about, what is riding on this marketing in your mind? Like, is it the fact, because obviously you want the customers, you want the launch to be successful, but I guess tell us a little more what you're feeling about it and what your concerns are personally.
As someone who started out as a solo founder and was a solo founder for 2 years, when it was just me, if Nessle didn't go big, it was, just me. Now we have a team. We have people who are invested, not financially, but in terms of their support in seeing our business thrive. And that includes the 32 experts who have, with a smile and with plenty of their time, have onboarded and are waiting in the wings to receive customers. And so the weight on my shoulders is that I feel like if we press go and it's crickets, then there's a lot of people who are going to be disappointed. And I know from speaking to other founders of two-sided marketplaces that if that's the tone you start with in the first few days, the provider side will quickly fizzle out and think, this is not really worth my time. Why am I on this platform? I'll just continue my business as it was. So we were really wanting to come strong with a lot of customers to the experts who are ready to go when we launch the program.
And in that regard, the marketing concern, that's the concern around the outcomes, and that makes sense. That would be generating a lot of anxiety the way you're describing it. But as far as the marketing challenge, do you have anything that you've already planned to do, or is it more now, like you said, you've got low budget and you're trying to figure out what is the best way to do the activity? Have you set any expectations with the providers? I guess kind of tell us where you are right now in terms of the drawing board with marketing efforts to get the outcomes you're describing.
So one thing that we are doing to seed the platform is that we have 3 pilots going this fall that are B2B2C, which is a really exciting channel that we're hoping to explore more of in the future. So this would be targeting business, employers who want to give Nessle as a employee benefit, or health systems who maybe they are in rural areas and so they don't have the full wraparound care. And this is a way that they can support their patients. What we are focusing on with our pilots is 3 nonprofit organizations in Central Virginia who serve underprivileged parents. And they typically give them either services or, and for the most part, physical items like a car seat. And so we are pro bono, we are eating the cost of giving those parents free sessions on Nessle so that there will be activity, in the month of September for the experts who are on the site. That's one thing. We have talked about doing that in sort of a guerrilla style to parents who are not affiliated with these organizations, like just going to a festival and handing out free sessions or $10 off of a session just so that we can get activity on it. Those are the paid things that we've been talking about doing. And then everything that you can imagine that is free, I have a huge long list of all the possible things we can do. And it's just a matter of, we don't have time to do this all. We have to narrow it down. So this is like giving workshops at employment places, at companies locally here in Richmond, or trying to write posts for blogs as a guest post or appear on people's podcasts. Certainly we've optimized SEO and are always trying to focus on that. We have a blog, we have social media, we have all the things, but it feels like throwing spaghetti against the wall and trying to see what's going to stick.
How did it come about that there was someone that came to you for another referral for the situation where you paired someone with someone in Barcelona? Were they coming to you as an individual, or like?
That was a former client of mine who I reached out to her, and I had been a lactation counselor for her. So this was several months ago. Now her baby's older. And I reached out to her for user research reasons. So my own background is in user research, and I've been doing lots of customer discovery calls. And I reached out to a lot of former clients to do customer discovery calls with them. In our call, I understood that she was, now her struggle is sleep, right? Because her baby's older. The feeding concerns have all been taken care of, and now the focus is sleep. And she described her challenge to me about how, I don't want to sleep train. I don't want to listen to the cries. I really need a gentle approach. I'm willing to put time into it. I just haven't found anything on Instagram that speaks to me. I haven't found anyone nearby who speaks to me. And then I had just had a conversation with a sleep specialist who was interested in joining our site, and she's in Barcelona. I said, I have the perfect person for you. So that's how that connection was made.
Got it.
But I can't do user research calls every time I need to get a new customer.
No, of course. But at the heart of it, that's the problem you're trying to solve. At the heart of it, that's the value you're trying to bring into the universe.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because the problem with, or not the problem, but the orientation that people often have with marketing for two-sided marketplaces is that it's about growing the marketplace and the network itself, as opposed to the problem that's being solved. And the reason why I make that distinction is because the network and the marketplace, you would be a very rare marketplace if the launch just took an exact path that you thought it was going to take. It will be highly iterative. And there's very little that can replace that word of mouth that you said, is what established a lot of the growth that you had so far. And the bottom line is also there's a lot of marketing efforts. Some will fail, some will do better than others. And the unifying factor won't be this work necessarily for growing the network. It'll grow for the perceived value of the various customers. So the more that grows, the more that the perceived value is of the customers coming to the marketplace, the more chance your marketplace has succeeding. Mm-hmm. And looking at it that shift in perspective, the reason I'm even saying it like that is because you're the moment in time where there might be crickets or something like that. It's an iteration, from there. So I would recommend just the expectation that's being set for different people, not necessarily be a moment in time about the platform, because the platform itself is very likely to change. So mm-hmm. It's much more about what is bringing the different people together. So if and this was a question I had, do the experts, is there any negative side for them being part of the network? Like you said, you're the fears that they'll leave.
Yes. So we take a 20% platform fee. So the negative side is that if they find their own customers and continue to coordinate everything on their own digital tools, they keep 20% that we would normally be taking.
Right, but as long as they're on the platform, if they're getting other customers, there's no cost for them to be on the platform itself.
Correct. Yes. And not now. I mean, who knows? We might change our business model, but for now there is not. Yeah. It's just the platform fee.
So ultimately that's a tactical problem. The experts staying connected, but the mm-hmm. real problem you're trying to solve is with your customers. Like, I know you have the need to market to both groups, but I would suggest that one you might be marketing to, and one is a technical problem of convincing them to stay. So like the famous example of Uber paying drivers to be idle. Like you don't have that problem because if they're on your network, there's no challenge there. But Uber was focused on the customer problem as opposed to necessarily the provider problem. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I would recommend just knowing which one you're looking at and which problem you're trying to solve. And that's where you're putting your effort, and the rest is just a technical constraint. How do I keep these other people staying connected with me, the providers, as I iterate the journey of growing the customer network?
Right. Yes, that we've thought about that before, about how the hard, what's the hard side of your two-sided marketplace? The hard side for us is going to be the parents. And what overwhelms me about that is that you can get so specific with experts. You could really develop a lot of personas and just target a key set of people. You can find them online. Parents, there's so many different types of parents. We want to serve parents who normally could not afford this. We want to serve parents who could afford this. We want to serve parents in rural areas. It's a big push for us. We want to serve parents in big cities who have their pick of doulas, and they just are overwhelmed by trying to sift through all their bios. So it's hard for us to focus on that side, although it is important because it feels so vast.
The parent side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in that moment where I'm log jammed because I have so much to tell you, but I was like, I can only say a few things at a time. Because marketing, let me start here, because I think, Jonathan is here too in the beginning of the conversation. We're defining the problem that you're feeling, because marketing can be so overwhelming in so many ways, because in some ways, like you started by articulating energetically, we have a limited budget, which is kind of implying the tension is we've got limited resources and we need to have a bigger outcome than we think we can achieve with those resources. But ultimately, even from hearing you, budget is not as much of a concern. It's just time. And like you said, the infinite variety of activities you could be engaging in, because you're already very network and sort of relationship based. So I don't even think it's budget as much of a concern, because anyone can say they have a marketing budget issue, because you can spend infinite money marketing. Yeah. And just the more money you put in, even if it's sloppy marketing, the more ROI, you could say low ROI, but the more outcome you're going to get. So for you, even like this whole question about the problem being, to me, is tied to the outcome you're looking for, or the conversation of that ROI. Because it's very easy in a marketing sense to get into this zone where we don't have enough money, we don't have enough time. But the real question is, what is the outcome you're trying to achieve? And like, I would go there for just a minute first, because like you said, you want customers, obviously. But how many customers? Like, what does actually success look like for you right now? When you launch, do you need every single provider to have a full book of business? Or is it really just that you have a few positive interactions that prove out the power of the platform? So maybe I'd like you to reflect on that with me for a second. What does like success look like in this launch, or what would you like to see as an outcome of marketing or general activity for this first phase?
Well, I've got my numbers, I've got the numbers that the financial model says are our targets. Yeah. So we're hoping to have 50 experts by the end of 2022. Okay. We're hoping to have 500 parents who have at least, registered to be on our site. And we'd like to have 200 parents who have made a purchase on the site. So we have the numbers, but both of you seem to be focusing in on the core of why we're doing this in the first place. And so I know these experts, I know this world, and stories of success, key stories of success in the early days are going to be the energy that keeps us moving forward. So it's really less about the numbers and more about being able to point to this and say, look, we are helping parents in a new way. This has not been done before. We've all wanted this to happen, and now it is here. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the critical piece. And like you said, we're both honing in on it, because the stress that you're feeling, that intuitively, what you just articulated very easily to us, but it's easy to lose focus on that when you are looking to hit numbers or satisfy 32 providers at launch. And like you said, when you talk about the tension of where is marketing spend going, or like, how are we going to do this marketing? you've got to get real clear with your team first on what is the marketing is supposed to achieve. Is it supposed to achieve at launch those few really key stories that you can build off of and really get the network humming, or is it supposed to get 500 parents and 50 providers by X date? Because even if you knew which one of those targets you were going to try for, there's infinite marketing strategies and budgets that could be used to accomplish them. But you're not going to pick one if you don't know a clear target first. So like the advisement would be start there, right? Because you're not even going to have a conversation out to relieve your team or your personal anxiety around marketing strategy until you know the outcome you're trying to achieve first.
And the reason you're trying to achieve it.
Yeah.
Because what will unify ultimately the marketplace is having providers who have a similar philosophy and have parents who are coming in for that same philosophy. Because you're not going to build a better marketplace than exists right now. Like, in other words, there are many marketplaces out there. So that's not your value proposition. Your value proposition is the experience that someone's going to have by coming on the marketplace. And so you have to focus on that purpose in whatever you're marketing. And then as you iterate through what will be very unscalable steps after you launch, because it's very rare that you'll alight on exactly the way to do it. What will keep people is that purpose. That's what's going to keep people connected, much more likely than it just being a marketplace. Because it's a specific kind of marketplace.
Yeah.
And then that also tells you the kind of marketing to do, because everyone can relate to that judgmental expert that they went to when they're a new parent. You haven't been able to breastfeed, 20 times today, so you're a terrible person. That is highly relatable. Whereas and that will push people past maybe a user experience that isn't as ideal, but if the focus is on, we just need people, as opposed to people that are looking for a specific thing, then you're competing against every marketplace that exists.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to do, obviously.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam, I don't know if that's, I added to that point. I don't know if you had.
No, you did. I think this is an important one, so I just want to give Carly a chance to reflect. And I see she's furiously note-taking, so.
I'm a huge note taker.
No, it's great.
Yeah, we need people who buy into this mission and feel this pain for sure.
But I did want to give you, before you go on, because now, like I said, there's a torrent of thoughts that we have to share. But I guess in listening to your reflection on the outcome that you're looking for, what are your thoughts?
This is really helpful for me. Also, we're a remote team. We're getting ready to meet in person. Actually, it'll be the first time that we've all gotten together in person. And I love the idea of, I'm going to be in charge of putting the marketing plan up on the whiteboard, right? So I was picturing it as being numbers, but it's not numbers. It's more about this purpose and this reason that has brought us to build this startup in the first place. And so that's energizing to me to imagine, starting with the principle behind it and encouraging people that really, yes, we need to focus on numbers. We need to make our financial model work. But here, as we launch, success looks like having these golden moment stories that will then feed the energy of future marketing or future connections and growth. Yeah.
And building the tribe. And also, like I said, it's a bit of a perspective switch, but I think it's apt now at this point in the conversation. It can feel more complicated having a two-sided market, but part of what Jonathan is trying to articulate is that you are still creating a single experience. And that's something that, like, when you think of a traditional product or service company, you want to start by saying, what is your purpose and what is the value proposition of that particular, service or product you're selling, and then make sure you're nurturing it. Even though it may seem confusing and like you're talking two different markets, you really are creating a single experience that just has two parties involved. And making sure that you're focusing on articulating that and nurturing that, and that's what you're marketing, is very important. Because if you do that correctly, if you think about it, you're just marketing the same thing to two different parties. But you're not really having to have like a bifurcated marketing strategy. And I think that's part of this idea that if you create a unique experience, that is your value proposition. And like you said, when both parties come together and create the experience you're curating, then both sides will be promoters of that experience. And that's the marketing fuel that you're going to need to kind of iterate from.
Yeah.
And you have a big advantage over a lot of marketplaces because a new parent it's such an all-encompassing experience that they're not necessarily going to have the same problem that other marketplaces have, which is that from a user experience perspective, I have to go to multiple markets. So no matter how good any one of them is, they're all different. And that's why, that's the tension that exists generally now. And the traditional solution is like we're saying anyway, is to have your unique value proposition that's really honed on your customers. But at the end of the day, again, it is so all encompassing that people will turn to, any process that meets that particular time period in their life. So that's great. But then just like it's all encompassing, parents are so, are unique in the value proposition they're looking for, because you have I've just seen the mommy blogs that my wife has been on over the years, and each one is so they're very passionate about a particular area of parenting or a particular topic or something like that. So that's makes it ripe for a great marketing experience, but you need to know what yours is, because maybe you shouldn't be attracting every type of expert. Maybe you shouldn't even be trying to attract every single kind of customer. That's not, like you said the most important thing I felt in the conversation, which was something was energizing to you. You hold on to that. That is where you're building from for everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just
if that doesn't exist, then, everything else is unsustainable activity, even if it feels good in the moment.
Yeah, and just to sneak a point in there, because this relates back to what you're saying about those people you're afraid they're going to leave the platform if you don't give them those customers on day one. Those are not sustainable providers for an experience that you're trying to curate. So if you get distracted by saying okay, well, I have these providers that if I don't get them customers and revenue generation and proof by the first quarter that this is good, they're going to leave us. That's not the kind of people that is going to make you focus on a sustainable experience that you're building, because that's incentivizing the wrong thing. And if that's the concern, then you've got to look at your network early on and super critical this phase and say, do you want to be beholden to a network of people that you've curated that are only focused on sales, or focused on helping and supporting the mission that you're putting out there? Because those people tend to become the tribe from the Godin language, which is the people that want to stay with you and are willing to weather some ups and downs because they're really bought into the experience. And I think those are the people that need to be nurtured and supported. And then you shouldn't feel this unwanted pressure, or maybe it's something just that you've created in your own head, this narrative that people won't see the value of this unless I get them that money right off the bat, because that in itself is demotivating and also just makes it tough on you.
Mm-hmm.
And even
really
your team. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. You were going to say something, Carly.
I was just going to say that's really helpful. I've been in conversations with so many other people who run two-sided marketplaces without thinking of the fact that their principles may not fully transfer to something that is so deeply relationship driven. And, it's different from a delivery driver, for example.
Exactly.
Because it's a business that only due to the pandemic really became more than 10%, hands off. These are people who have done hands-on work almost exclusively for years, and only recently has it pivoted so that families are receptive to virtual support. So yeah, it's helpful to remind myself and my team that everything we hear about a two-sided marketplace, full stop, does not necessarily apply to Nessle.
Yeah.
Exactly. Nor should it. And the more you think of it as your mission as opposed to the two-sided marketplace, the less you're going to have to go through iterations of going down pathways that people say, this is what you need for the marketplace. So I'm sure you've read up on network effects, and then you have a certain idea of how many people, and all of these things are very good for getting ideas, but they're not very good in the specific application at all. Because if there was a rule book for this, then everybody would be creating successful marketplaces. But, obviously, they're not. But you could be successful whether or not it's on a platform is another point, I guess, what we're trying to get at. Like, the platform seems like the right way to do it, and we're not suggesting otherwise. But if the platform is what makes it successful only, then that's a deviation from the mission. So it could be there's some other technology or some other way to do it. I'm not suggesting it, but the goal is you have to be focused on that purpose and what you're trying to bring out there. And that implies also that whether or not day one there's crickets, like, there's going to be iterations of this, that you're going to learn from. And so setting expectations realistically, people will go through that process. If it's not, like Sam said, if it's not just looking at what's, I want to get my paycheck, or I want to get, et cetera, it's too hard a road, and it's not inspiring enough anyway.
True. I like this.
Yeah.
This is helpful, y'all.
Good.
And you're going to say, Sam?
No, continue your thought, please.
Yeah. And, the what you did with the Yelp API, like, that's a great idea. So in other words, like, there isn't a silver bullet necessarily, but like the idea of finding the communities at the point of use, so like mommy blogs, I know that sounds like a slog, but they're passionate, it's a passionate group generally, getting out to as many as possible sounds like a good idea. But then there's other groups like hospitals, there's retailers of, baby products. Like, it's at that moment in time, like, everyone can relate to having a desperate fear about something with their child, and wishing that there was something called, maybe being embarrassed to call the doctor, or, like, in other words, like, the tensions that come up in what you're trying to do is very real for people, especially in that moment. So anything that connects, anything that puts you in front of people at that moment is the right way to go.
Yeah, I think my major takeaway from thinking about that is that we so often are saying to experts, you no longer have to be word of mouth. You no longer have to be word of mouth. That's where you've been getting all your business. Now you can use Nessle. But the truth is, Nessle will need to be word of mouth. That's the way this information is passed. We've seen that over and over again. That's how these individuals are getting their customers. So maybe they don't have to do it anymore when they can rely on Nessle, but Nessle will need to be word of mouth. And so what we need to do is find the tribe of people who can have these experiences that are so wonderful that are worth sharing with someone.
Yeah. And that's where, from our general marketing perspective, it's kind of like the secret punchline, I guess, that, traditional marketing, you could do the numbers, you could lead by the numbers, you can invest, and you can spam the marketplace, and you can get conversion at low percentage rates. And that's the classic way to think about it in some regard. I'm kind of, villainizing it a little bit and making it super sterile. But like, that way of thinking is where a lot of people, the reading leads you and the math kind of leads you. But the reality is, whether you're budget constrained or not, we have the same answer, which is you're scaling authentic interactions. And like, that has to start for a startup very small and locally. But whatever you can find out in having authentic relationships and authentic interactions with people that generate the outcome that you're looking for, you're taking that experience, and all marketing is beyond that is scaling it. And even if you had $1 million budget right now, we would give you the same exact advice, because you can't cheat that.
Right.
And that's the step you're not going to be able to manufacture. And then in terms of tactical guidance to create that, it's a lot of times path of least resistance, building off the momentum you have, the people the network you've been talking about. Like, you already had that instinct. That is our advisement, because that's the conscious way to do it. If you all of a sudden you've been having these conversations, you've been, have your own clients, your providers you've been talking about their own clients, and you think like, we're going to separate from that and then create this marketing strategy that just needs money and promotion outside of that, you're taking your most useful asset and you're just putting it, on the shelf, and you're trying to forge another path that's not continuous. So like, even if you had all the budget, that's what I'm saying, the guidance wouldn't be any different. It's take the momentum. Because like you said, the market segment, you could segment tons of ways, the market that you're looking at. like low income, people who just don't have time. Like you mentioned sort of these personas. Our recommendation is always follow the path of least resistance at this point. Who is the market that's most easily accessible to you? Who is the customer that you know that's most excited that you could reach out to for the lowest cost and the lowest effort? Because if you let that guide the direction, you're already using your natural energy, your natural momentum. You're not starting from scratch. And if you can just distill in those interactions, even at a micro level, what is the good thing? What is that experience? What is the story? You scale that. And the investment to scaling that is your marketing plan generally, because that's going to be a sustainable marketing plan that's already building on what you're doing. So hopefully that brings a few things together and that helps clarify a little bit.
Definitely. Absolutely. It does.
And it's also where unintentional great things can happen, because once you build that persona and you build that story that's very, very clear, then suddenly, let's say there's an influencer on social media who, resonates with that and they post it, but they're not going to post about another marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, when I say not post, like it's not a tactical issue, but it's more like, because there's nothing inspiring about it. Like, so in other words, people are going to help your message if their message resonates, and it might not resonate with everybody. And that's actually okay,
Yeah.
And that's the other reason why speaking to people who are just or giving you advice on growing a marketplace by itself, that's how people end up finding themselves in a job that they hate, because then it's just about like you end up having maybe a whole bunch of people, customers and providers who, none of whom seem to be associated with your, personal mission. And that's,
right.
So great job in creating a marketplace, but it's not going to be sustainable for anybody. And it's not going to be what keeps your passion going and what inspires other people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost, we prefer people being fund constrained when they're starting, and especially for a marketplace, because it keeps people very, very, it enables focusing much more on the single story instead of the 1,000 story.
Yeah.
And the single story is what you're trying to scale ultimately, not the 1,000 story.
And focus on where you're starting and what you have now at hand versus focusing on what you want that you can't have or don't have. Because that's what a lot of marketing makes people think, which drives people crazy, which is like, this is the marketing I should be doing, but I can't. So like, how do I do it? Well, focus on the marketing you can do that you have. And that's actually usually the right way to go. And I know we're throwing a lot at you in quick succession, but I just had one more point that I'd like to open up to folks in your position, which is, and this is tied to the idea that the providers you already have, the one side of the marketplace you've already sort of kind of locked in, at least at this moment, don't take it all on you to just satisfy them. Like building on this idea that they're part of your tribe that you're trying to grow and that their success is your success, open the conversation to them. Work with them. Let them help you with marketing. You need to look at them as part of the company right now. And a lot of founders, when you get in this mode, it's really easy because you're kind of in the control seat. But like when you're building a network powered business, especially, even at this early stage, it's okay to be vulnerable and let them know, like, we need your help. Let's all make this a success together. Even bring them into some of your marketing planning, not in the executive whiteboarding room like you're about to have, but like have focus groups. Ask them if they want to be, they want to get their word in or use their expertise, because it's almost like people are very afraid traditionally to like put work, because it almost seems like you're putting work on them, or like volunteer, like you're like asking for volunteers, and people feel like that's distasteful. But in reality, in the new power culture, bringing them in, giving them a seat at the table, letting them say their opinion and how the young company is growing is deeply engaging for the right people. And like, that's the kind of thing that's really going to build your first network up really strong, which is, we're a young company. You're some of our first providers. Tell us what you think. Tell us how you would market. How do you want us to help you get your first customers? And then in that point, you're not guessing. You're not acting as an agent on their behalf, and you're not setting yourself up so the world's on your shoulders. And if you don't get them customers, you've failed them, because they're part of your journey. They're part of your group. And I think just saying that is the last real like tactical thing I want to give you, because people are very hesitant to open that conversation up. But if you're going to create that sustainable culture that Jonathan and I are articulating, having conversations with your customers, having conversations with your providers at that level, you are a facilitator more than like you are the one who has to do everything.
And that last point, everything Sam was saying equally applies to the customers amazingly.
Yeah.
Because you think of the customers as you need to convince them to do something, or like, please, I hope they come. But it's more like, I'm building this community that is, stands for this, and do you want to participate? People have a lot of energy for that.
Yeah.
And that also sustains the energy through the iterations that the platform undoubtedly will have to go through. So there is an element of personal brand in all of this, both for the specific providers and for yourself, because that's where that's what people are resonating. This is a very personal area also, like any therapeutic or medical advice is personal, but this is particularly personal, so it's, it might not feel scalable to try scaling your energy, but there are platforms for that. And either way, it has to start there. And that helps you identify and distill what are the qualities that other people need to have if they're going to help with this journey.
Yeah. Carly, how are you feeling? I know the last 15 minutes has just been a salvo.
Well, I was just thinking that, so I work out of a co-working space, so this is not my office. But if it were, I have a lot of one-liners that I would now paint on the wall just from this conversation. I feel like a lot of key takeaways, like a seat at the table, focus on the single story, scaling authentic interactions. It's really helpful to focus in on the purpose behind what we're trying to do. So I appreciate that. And that gives me renewed enthusiasm for getting ready to launch this platform.
Good. Well, on that, we don't want to put too much out there. Do you have any last minute burning questions or comments for us?
Do I have time to ask one?
Yeah, of
just
course.
Follow up to what y'all
Please.
just said.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not good at asking people to do stuff for free. I've never been good at that. And I see what you're saying about the, getting them involved, and they're part of this effort. And yet I feel like I need to give them something. Like I need to make sure that they're not just giving, content to us for free, or that they're not giving us time for free, particularly because that can sometimes be a hot button issue in a birth workers world where we're often asked to do things for a lower cost. So I'm trying to think of how can I express the gratitude that I have and how earnestly I want their involvement with some sort of, non-transactional, but like, how do I repay them?
So I'll give my take. If I just recorded the last 10 seconds of what you said, I would just use that. And that's really to say, when you approach somebody, being transparent and saying like, I'm so grateful that you're working with us up to this point. And, I'm really hesitant to ask you for more of your time, but I want to build a sustainable, lasting experience for you. And I think you being a part of that is critical to being successful. And just kind of saying, showing what you're discomfort about, articulating what you're trying to do, and then letting them have the openness. You don't have to approach it like you have to sell them something where they have to work for free and you're not receptive to being uncomfortable about the ask, but make it more of the conversation like you just had with us, because people, if you bring that kind of honesty to the conversation and give them an opening to respond like, no, I'd rather not, I'd rather wait for you to do this, or like they feel like comfortable telling you where their boundaries are and what they're willing to do, you'll find the right level of engagement if you just leave the level. You don't have to control the interaction so much or feel like you have to disclose certain things or do that. I think you're so authentic in this conversation we're having right now, and I think it translates really well. Just this purpose that you have, and also this expression of gratitude that people would be willing to help, and that you are all unified in a common mission. So I wouldn't say that there's much advisement besides just kind of bringing that energy and that authenticity to the conversation and seeing, and all 32 of them might say, hey, no, I don't have time for this. And that's when you may sit down and say, maybe I'm not the first Yelp round, or the first people I have are maybe not the right people. But I think that's also good feedback for where you're at.
Right. Yeah.
And the thought that they're doing something for free is assuming a future state where this may not be successful. But you also allow yourself to go on the path of imagining this is incredibly successful and it's wildfire and there's an incredible community. Now, are you doing them a favor, or are they doing you a favor now, or are you doing them a favor that they got in at this point of this community? So everyone takes risk with any time that they're putting in, and everyone has their own agency to decide what they're going to participate in. But if I had a chance and I was in the space to participate in this and be part of what this community could be, then that would be what would inspire me. And then I'd look back at this time and say, yeah, I was one of the original people in Nessle, So like that would be incredible. So just temper the thought of things not working with the things working when deciding whether or not you're asking somebody to do something for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess one more piece of just general networking advice, and I'm not saying like you need this, but like that I give to people because this is a similar situation. There's always this discomfort of going and asking for people for something when you feel like you don't have quid pro quo or you don't have something to offer in return, or like asking somebody for something that you can't return. That's a universal feeling. That's what also creates a lot of tension in young people when they network, for example, where they feel like, how can I go and ask a mature person who has all this experience, all these things to offer when I have nothing to offer? Like as if that exchange needs to have another end to it. And I think if you go in with that mentality, that's what causes the discomfort you're articulating now, which is like, well, how can I ask people to do something for me if I have nothing to offer in return? And I think that premise deserves being interrogated because it creates an unhealthy dynamic when you're asking, because part of our other answer to this question, this topic, is that when you go to somebody and say, would you like to help with this? Or can I ask for your help with this? And you give them an option to say no. If they do say yes, it's because they are getting something out of it. They want to be generous. They get a sense of fulfillment. They want to be a part of it. And that in itself is the return for them saying yes. It's the same reason we mentor young people. It's the same reason we support people, because we want to build relationships for various reasons. So I would just say be careful in presuming that you have nothing to offer, because a lot of times you just showing up to the table and inviting them to be a part of the conversation is the offer. That is itself the thing that gives people value and gives them an interface to connect with you in a way that before you brought it up, they didn't have before. That is the bartering chip. So don't be too quick to judge yourself that like, I'm just asking people or delegating to people that don't want to do it. As long as you're being open with like asking them, do you want to do this? And like making sure they feel comfortable saying that they don't. Beyond that, you don't have to really control their experience.
And I so strongly believe in what Sam just said that I'm hesitant to add this next point, but I'll say it. Another thing you can consider is, if there is this explosive growth of the community, is there a way that they could enjoy, these initial providers, the upside of it?
Yeah.
So is there something? And now that I hate saying it because then it brings it back to quid pro quo at some level, but it is a technique that also vets if people are thinking about being in this for the long term, because it doesn't matter how much you plan right now and how much marketing you do. Again, there will be iterations, and the people that stick with it are the ones that are connected by a sense of purpose, not by a quid pro quo.
Yep. That's great, y'all. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hopefully you're feeling better. You've got some stuff to think about, but the biggest thing is, we feel like it's a good outcome when we hear you're energized now to go have a marketing meeting with your team, because I think that means it's definitely resolved some of the tension that you brought onto the episode. So
yeah, and I'm so excited. I got this whiteboard right behind me. I'm going to make a bunch of notes now while my brain is going strong. So thank you all so much for the great counsel and ideas.
Great. Well, with that, thank you for coming on the show and being able to authentically share some of your experience with us and our audience. And if you have any people that you think would also benefit from coming on the show, and for those listening, if you have any comments, questions, we love to hear from you. Please engage with us. But other than that, we'll see everyone next week. Thank you so much.